The wind tore across the red desert like a restless spirit, carrying whispers of forgotten legends. On nights like this, people swore you could hear the ghosts of old cowboys calling out for redemption. But tonight, it wasn't a ghost who rode the trail. It was a man named Cole McGraw, a cowboy who had wandered from one end of the territory to the other, searching for work, meaning, and perhaps something even he couldn't name. His horse snorted in the dry air as the last streaks of sunlight bled into the horizon. And though he didn't know it yet, before the next sunrise he would cross paths with someone who would change him forever. Cole had built his life around silence and self-reliance. After losing his family in a ranch fire when he was young, he swore he'd never be tied down again. Work came easy, rounding up strays, fixing fences, escorting wagon trains, but he moved on before anything could root him. He wasn't cruel, but he didn't linger. Some called him reliable, others called him a drifter. Either way, the name fit. Yet under his weathered hat and behind his quiet eyes, there was a tired man carrying a weight he rarely admitted to anyone. He had stopped for water at an old trading post on the edge of the Sierra del Diablo when trouble found him. A crowd had gathered, and in the middle of it stood a woman unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her hair was long and dark as raven feathers, her dress torn and dusty from travel. Two rough-looking men were shoving her toward a wagon, arguing about money. Cole didn't know the story, but he could see the fear in her eyes. Wild, trapped, desperate. Something about it punched through his armor. Without thinking, he stepped off his horse and spoke, his voice low but firm. "That's enough." The men laughed, as men like them always did when someone interfered. But Cole had seen that kind of laugh before. He knew how to end it. In a blur, he drew his revolver, not aiming to kill but to convince. The sound of the hammer cocking silenced them. "Let her go," he said. They spat curses and backed off, not eager to die in the dust. The woman stumbled free, trembling. Cole reached for her arm gently. "You're safe now," he told her. But even as he spoke, he felt a shift inside himself. Saving someone was one thing. Carrying them forward was another. Her name was Isabella Reyes, though the locals called her the Desert Beauty. She had grown up in a small settlement on the edge of the Badlands, daughter of a rancher who had lost everything to drought and bandits. She had been on her way to find distant relatives when the two men had tried to abduct her. Despite her beauty, she had a fire in her spirit, her voice steady as she explained her story to Cole. She didn't cry. She didn't ask for pity. She just said she needed to get home. Something in her resilience stirred Cole in ways he hadn't felt in years. They rode together for days, crossing canyons carved by centuries of wind, sleeping under the stars. At first, it was a practical arrangement. He was simply ensuring her safety. But as miles passed, she began to open up about her dreams, her fears, and her longing for a life where she could stand on her own 2 feet without being seen as someone's possession. Cole listened, sometimes offering quiet advice, sometimes only silence. She noticed the scar on his hand, the way he avoided questions about his past, the nights he stayed up long after she'd fallen asleep, staring into the fire as though trying to see a life he'd lost. The journey was not easy. They were pursued by the 2 men he had driven off at the trading post. A dust storm separated them one night, forcing Cole to search half a day before finding her again under a rocky ledge. Food ran short, water ran even shorter, but in each trial they learned more about each other. His instinct to protect, her instinct to survive. She began to trust him with small details of her childhood, and he found himself telling her things he had never spoken aloud: the loss of his family, his vow to stay unbound, his quiet ache for something to believe in. When they finally reached her settlement, Isabella faced another trial. The land her family had once owned was gone, sold off by her father in desperation. Her relatives were kind but could barely feed themselves. She had no home, no job, and no plan. Cole could have ridden off then, leaving her at her family's door. But something in him refused. He offered to help rebuild her life, at least long enough to get her started. He found work at a nearby ranch, saving every penny to buy a small piece of land where she could raise goats and tend a garden. As weeks turned into months, they built a rhythm. Isabella taught Cole to laugh again, to see color in a world he had long viewed in shades of dust and gray. He taught her to ride more confidently, to shoot straight, to mend fences and build sheds. But in the quiet of the night, when she fell asleep by the hearth, Cole felt a growing fear. The more he gave of himself, the harder it would be to leave. And deep down, he still believed he wasn't meant for permanence. He feared he'd only bring her pain if he stayed. One evening, a local land baron tried to claim Isabella's small homestead, saying the deed was invalid. Cole confronted him, risking a gunfight to defend her rights. It ended with Cole beaten but alive, the baron backing off under the threat of the town sheriff. Isabella held him afterward, tears on her cheeks. "Why do you do this for me?" she asked. Cole had no answer, only the realization that somewhere along the trail he had crossed from protector to something deeper. He had given her his strength, his time, his heart. And now, as he looked into her eyes, he knew he was in love. But Cole also knew the cost. His life had been built on moving on. He feared what would happen if he stayed and failed her. He feared that his darkness, his nightmares, his wandering soul would eventually hurt her more than help. So, without a word, one dawn he saddled his horse, left the deed papers on the table, and rode off before she woke. The desert swallowed him again, as it always had. Behind him, the small cabin they had built together stood quiet in the sunrise. Isabella woke to find him gone. She searched for days, but Cole had vanished into the hills. Yet she wasn't broken. He had given her enough to stand. She kept the homestead, expanded it, and became a voice for other women in the territory, teaching them how to claim land, how to defend themselves, how to stand tall in a world that tried to break them. Cole had rescued her from danger, but in a way she had rescued him from emptiness, even if he couldn't see it. And though he had lost his heart in the process, she had found hers. Years later, townspeople would speak of the desert beauty who turned her hardship into strength, and the cowboy who vanished like a myth. Some swore they saw him from time to time at the edge of the horizon, watching the ranch he had built with his hands, making sure she was safe. Maybe he was too ashamed to return. Maybe he was just waiting for the courage. Or maybe he knew she no longer needed saving. The story of Cole McGraw and Isabella Reyes became a quiet legend of the West. Not just about a man rescuing a woman, but about two souls meeting at the right time to change each other. His gift was protection. Her gift was purpose. And though they never shared a life under the same roof, they shared something larger. A lesson carved into the heart of the desert itself. Sometimes the greatest act of love is giving someone the tools to stand without you, even if it breaks you to leave. And so the wind still whispers their story across the red canyons, a song of courage, sacrifice, and the bittersweet truth that not all rescues end with a shared sunset. Yet from their pain grew a message that endures, the strength to rise, to rebuild, and to transform loss into legacy lives in all of us, waiting to be called forth by the right moment, the right person, or the right journey.